Hello.
Hello, and welcome back again. I'm Candace.
And I'm Val.
And welcome to our Closing the Early Literacy Gap podcast.
This podcast is for anyone who has anything to do with small children or anyone working with those in the early stages of literacy learning or learning how to read.
Yes, parents, teachers, administration.
People who are training or coaching teachers in any way. Anyone.
This podcast is for anyone. Hello again. Welcome. We're doing episode 14. Thank you so much for following us on our journey. Today we're talking about the brain.
The brain. The brain. Don't go insane. It's
Just the brain. Really awesome song written by a friend of
ours.
Yes, ours. But okay, before we start talking about the brain and getting into the nitty-gritty of it and how it affects reading and how it works, we do want to preface, we are not brain scientists.
Not at all.
We have just taken knowledge and information that we've gotten from different areas and different sources. We're going to make sure to put our sources in our read notes for you. We're also going to reference them as we talk about information throughout this thing. So please don't, if you know more about the brain, by all means, please let us know if we got something wrong.
I have always been interested in brain science ever since I started teaching, though. I don't know about you.
No,
but when you look at those little kids and they're doing something really weird, you're like, what's going on in your brain?
What's going on? Like, you just wish you could just, for a minute, just go right inside and just be like, what?
Like, watch what's going on in there.
Or those cute little kids that are just happy all day.
Yeah.
Just, it doesn't matter. They're just so happy. And you're just like, I just want to see
them that way. Yeah.
What rainbows and unicorns is going on in your brain. Because I would like some of that.
Yes. So I have been known to say that in my other life, I would be a brain scientist. But then one time I was like, watching a video or reading a book or something, and it was about brain science. So I thought, it was like a documentary or something. I'm like, I want to watch this. And it was like so above my head. I'm like,
never mind.
Maybe I won't be a brain scientist. But although I could maybe if I it probably was just too many steps above me.
I was just going to reference our previous episode and just say, was it a lot of tier 3 words in there?
Yeah.
Ones where it's like, we don't use those all the time.
I didn't have enough background knowledge.
There you go.
So I think that was it. I probably could do it. But what we're going to do here is a very simplified version of what happens in the brain.
Yes.
Because it's really actually a lot more complex. Our brains are extremely complex. And it's my understanding that, even brain scientists know there's so much they don't know.
Yeah, they're still learning.
They're still learning.
Much.
And did you know, I think it might be kind of funny to add in here that like back in the ancient Egyptian times when they did the mummies, they would suck the brains out because they didn't think the brain was an important part of the body.
Yeah. It's called, oh my gosh. I know what it's called. It'll probably hit me in the middle of this episode. I'm so sorry.
But I just, we've come a long way is what I'm trying to say.
Not thinking it's important.
Ancient Egyptians thinking that it wasn't important at all to, now we know that it is the boss of our bodies.
Yeah.
And we're learning more and more about it. And
right.
So we're going to tell you what we know about what our brain is doing when we read today. So.
Right. So I think it's really important to let you know that language is primarily processed in the left hemisphere of your brain.
Yeah. So everything we're going to talk about is left side.
Is the left side of your brain. And obviously the left hemisphere is on the left side of your head. So just in case you're like, not sure, it's on the left side of your head. So just kind of picture over there as we're going through these different parts. So you can kind of understand the fun journey, sounds and words and everything go through in the brain.
Your brain's like a factory that's like everything has to go through this factory. So there's basically 4 parts of your brain that are being used when you're reading. And like I say, it's like they're going through all these different parts to process the whole thing. So you'll hear a lot of people say that our brains as humans are not wired for reading.
Right.
I've heard that a lot.
Which is a huge pet peeve of yours.
It is a pet peeve of mine. And even though I know that it's technically true, it's a pet peeve of mine because I'm like, actually, our brains are wired to be able to read, obviously, or we wouldn't be able to learn to read. So It's just not a direct it's not a direct route that our brains take
There
to
you
read.
go.
And so that's the important thing, is it's not a direct route. And so for some people, it's harder than other people, depending on
you have to pave that pathway.
Right, neural pathways. That's the term I was trying to think of.
Yep.
And actually, that reminds me.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm just going to throw this in.
No, I love when you do this.
When we're talking about neural pathways, one time somebody, and this was not a brain scientist either, it was just somebody I respected who was really smart. I heard them explaining that the brain is like a pile of sand.
Okay.
And when you drop, like if you were to drop a drop of water on top of the pile of sand, then the water runs down the side and it would start to make like divots in the sand. And that's neural pathways. But she was telling me that some people's pile of sand is a harder pile of sand than others. It's more like can become more like a stone. Mm-hmm. And so if it's a stone, it's going to take a lot more repetitions for the water to make those divots.
But so still not impossible.
Not impossible. Well, in fact, if you look at erosion, right? Rock erosion and stuff like that, it still happens. So not impossible, but I thought that was a really good.
I really like that. I
like to help you. No, remember that some kids just need more repetitions. They need more water droplets going down the same pathway,
right,
to make those neural pathways in their brain. So that was just something that came to me right now, and I thought it was appropriate.
I love that. That's very appropriate. Yeah. Okay, so there's 4 parts in our brain factory. And the first part?
Okay, so the first 2 parts I wanted to talk about, because this is the part that our brains are wired for, and that's for language. One thing that makes humans unique is that we are wired for spoken language. So when kids are born, they learn to talk pretty quickly.
Right.
I mean, of course, it takes a while. They have to learn to babble and all these things. They go through process, but they do learn to speak because it's just these 2 parts of the brain. The first part is in the frontal lobe, and it's responsible for sound, hearing sound, and articulation, like being able to distinguish sounds from each other. And we talked about this when we talked about phonemic awareness, right?
Yes, we did.
And of course, it takes time for that to become developed really well, but it's still a normal part of a human's brain. And so we hear that and we make sense of those sounds. Mm-hmm. And then that goes to Wernicke's area, which is the receptive area of our brain that receives language and makes sense of it. So comprehension, being able to understand what's being told to you. So it's just a simple pathway from the frontal lobe to Wernicke's area, which is kind of like behind your ear, I believe.
Okay.
And it's just a simple pathway, and it's back and forth because
right. It's a direct pathway.
You hear it goes back there, you make sense of it, and then you are able to make sound and talk back. Right. It kind of goes, it's just this quick back and forth.
Right.
Okay.
And so, like you were saying earlier, us as humans are already wired to be able to do that, right?
It's a very simple
pathway. Yes, is very easily built and in our brains.
Yes.
But when we start to read, right, it requires more parts of the brain, and we have to add a couple more parts and build additional pathways in order to read. And so my favorite part of the brain is back here, the back left side, kind of behind your ear. And that's your occipitotemporal. And this is your word formation area. So this is your orthographic mapping. This is where your brain picks up the patterns that it's seeing and hearing in words and being able to put them together and remember what they are and what sounds they make. Okay, and so that's right here. Then you have your parietotemporal, which is your word analysis.
That's more like up at the top, like between your frontal and there, like it kind of passes up top.
Right. So top middle of your head on the left hand side.
Again, we're not brain science.
Right. This is our right. And so that's your word analysis part. So that's connecting sounds to pictures.
Yes.
Right. That kind of ties into your comprehension when you're it's phonics. Right. So it's coming into when you're looking at a symbol and you're able to see the sound of it.
And know what
sound it makes.
Yes.
Right. Exactly. And then you have to use that orthographic mapping to help put it into word patterns to make that word. And then your brain has to go through all these different.
It's just a longer journey.
Yeah. It's a way longer journey. And so until you have all those neural pathways that are built and automaticity happens, right?
Yes.
It takes a while for it to happen, but as soon as I liked the way you were mentioning this to me when we talked about it earlier.
That once you're automatic, once your brain looks at the patterns and recognizes them and can make meaning by just looking at the word, then it can skip the word analysis and the sound part of it.
Yeah.
So basically, because now instead of just hearing the sounds and knowing meaning, you can see it and make meaning out of it. That's what reading automaticity is.
Right.
But in the process, your brain is having to go through, like, okay, see the word, connect the symbols that you're seeing to the sounds, and then take that sound and send it to the Wernicke area that's going to make sense of it.
Right.
So it's like a roundabout way. But then once it's automatic, it just goes straight from your word analysis to Wernicke's area.
So
it's quicker.
As I'm sitting here just watching you,
yeah,
right? So if you're just listening on a podcast, you can't see her,
right.
But she's literally moving her hands around on her head.
Yes.
And as she's sitting here doing this, I'm going, oh, okay. So pretty much when you're learning to read, your brain is like suburbia hell. And you're going through all of these turns and all of these things, all these pathways, right?
Factory.
All these things. And then all of a sudden, you can hit the freeway and you can just go.
Yeah, great analogy. I love it.
So that's kind of a different way of thinking it, but that's what was going through my brain as I was just listening to you.
That's a great way to look at it.
Talk about it is we have these little kids who are in suburbia hell right now and are getting frustrated and it's difficult, but then as soon as they figure it out, they can hit the freeway and go.
I love that. That's a great analogy. Thank you. Yeah, and so I think that's the point of us talking about this in this episode. Why it's so important to talk about the brain and to understand this process so that when your kids and your students are learning how to read, you can recognize what hard work their brains are doing. And some kids have neural pathways that go a lot quicker and they pick it up a lot quicker and they get to automaticity a lot quicker. Other kids, and so this is a good place to talk about Sally Shaywitz's book.
Yes.
Which we've referred to before, Overcoming Dyslexia. This is the first time that I really got interested in the brain for kids with dyslexia. Okay, because she shows on page 84 pictures of what parts of the brain are being used for a regular reader and what parts are being used for a dyslexic reader. And a regular reader is using those parts of the brain that we just talked about, the front, the middle, and the back. Whereas a dyslexic reader, it's the front a little bit more heavy and two parts on the right side of the brain.
And so we were doing actual research because I was like, what parts of the right side of the brain would they be using for this? And it turns out, and once again, we're not brain scientists. So this is what we kind of deciphered, is that they're using the problem solving areas of their brain.
Yeah.
And so their brain is looking at it and going, okay, I see this. I need to figure it out. I need to solve this problem. And so they're trying to pull on past background knowledge and see if they can come up with the right.
Yes. Well, and like for an example, we have several graphemes that are more than one letter.
Yes.
Like IGH.
Right.
It's my favorite one to pick because it's 3 letters and it always says I. Some of them, like OUGH, say lots of different things, but IGH always says I. And a person whose word form area of their brain, that back occipital temporal part, where you're doing orthographic mapping, your brain will pick up on that pattern. Some kids don't even need to be taught that IGH says I. Once they see it enough times, their brain picks up on the pattern. No, that's an exception. Most kids need to be taught.
Yeah.
But they can pick up on the pattern and then they've got it and they can make meaning out of it. They know the sound. They can get that sound. So kids with dyslexia, they take more reps to get those neural pathways.
Or kids that don't even have dyslexia but might have any sort of reading disability will take the time to sound out ig.
Right. Ig. And that's part of the problem-solving portion of the brain, I would guess. That's why I'm saying this, because I'm like, they're looking at this and I think they get so overwhelmed with all the sounds and all the letters and the different ways they can go together.
And all the rules.
And they're kicking it in. When they see it, I think they go into maybe a little bit of a panic and they kick it to their problem-solving part of their brain.
Yeah.
You know.
I would think that makes sense. To me, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, but if you know more,
Yes.
please share, because we
The
love
brain's complex and we understand that.
yes,
But
and we
that's
do love to learn.
just based on what we're looking at. That's what we're thinking. So I wanted to do we have just a few more minutes.
Mhm.
I wanted to do just an example of what it looks like when you're learning how to read. Now, Candace and I are both automatic readers.
Yes.
Amazing.
Right? Yay. I'm on the freeway.
Yes, we're on the freeway. So we can look at a word like cat and we don't have to go through this letter C says k, and this letter A says a, and this letter T says T, and it's going through all those parts of our brains to make sense of it to finally come to it. We look at the word cat and we just automatically, we can picture the concept of a cat.
Yep, we can picture the concept of the cat. We know what the word says. We have it all down. We are very confident in that word.
Exactly. But if you have never heard of the International Phonetic Alphabet,
look it up.
Look it up. Yes. So what it is symbols that have been determined internationally somehow. And I don't know by who. I don't know a whole lot about it.
Mm-hmm.
But to represent all the sounds
that are spoken.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, but of course they're different, right? So for example, in English, when we put T and H together,
yes,
there's two ways you can pronounce it: voiced and unvoiced. So you can say voiced. Show me a voiced example of TH. Yes, it makes your tongue tickle. If your tongue's not tickling, you're not voicing it. Okay, and then or it can be unvoiced. So what's the unvoiced? Right. So a voiced one where it's voiced would be like that, whereas one that's not voiced might be like thumb.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So in the International Phonetic Alphabet, there's different symbols for those two sounds because they're different sounds. Okay. Mm-hmm. So for the let's see if I can. We've got it in front of me. Okay. For think, well, it's be unvoiced. Mm-hmm. It's like a zero with a line through it.
Yeah.
Like right in the middle. Okay. And then for the voiced one, it's like a backwards 6
mm-hmm.
with the
top a sideways Z up at the top.
A Z?
Yeah.
Right here. Yeah.
Sideways Z.
I thought it just looked like a line through it.
Mm-mm.
Anyway, it's just a unique symbol. Okay. So some of the symbols in the International Phonetic Alphabet are the same. For example, T says T.
Right.
And F says F.
Right.
Okay.
But
all the vowels are a little different because they show like
sound,
for a short A sound, it's A and E together, like,
which is so weird.
Connected together, right?
Yeah.
And for a long E sound, it's actually I. It's actually an I, isn't it? I thought it was. Right here, yeah. See, right here, sheep has the example. It's a capital I with two dots by it. And a capital I is a short I sound, which is confusing to me because a capital I always says I.
So anyways, look it up. And then we'll also have it, if you go onto YouTube, we'll have a picture of it up on there for you so you guys can see it.
Yeah.
But then we're going to give you a second and we're going to show a sentence.
Well, I think we're just going to read this sentence and show you how it is for us trying to read it. So we have the code right in front of us, and we have the sentence here. It just comes from the Letters manual, and we're going to try to read it. We know all these. We have the code right here, so we can figure it out, right? And you'll just see how difficult it is for us to read this sentence, okay?
Mm-hmm.
All right, you ready?
Okay,
that's
the best. Oh, that's the
thing. Schwa.
About.
And alphabet. And see, part of it is we are using our meaning, and dyslexic kids do this too, right?
Is that it?
It almost looks like always, but it's not.
It's not.
Allows.
Oh yeah, allows the reader to decipher any new word.
So do you hear how long it took us to read that?
Yes.
Like if we had just read it in English, Oh, right here. It is in English right here. The
Oh,
best
yeah, it
thing
is.
about an alphabet is that it allows the reader to decipher any new word. Do you see how much faster I did that? Like I didn't have to
Yeah,
look
we
at
wouldn't
the,
have to think because it would be automatic.
Yeah, and
automatic for us.
imagine if it was like all new.
Like a whole page.
Like, I mean, right, we read that a lot of the sounds are the same, the B and the T and the
right.
right.
And so like our brains
kicked into some of the things that we knew already.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but if it was all new, like you have to every single symbol and every single thing.
Yeah.
So it's tricky, and it takes a lot of work on your brain.
Right. And we're adults, and we have a lot more background knowledge than these brand new kiddos do that are learning to read. And that took us a minute. So when we're throwing all these symbols and sounds and stuff at them, I think, and we have said this over and over and over again, but patience is so important.
It's a long game.
It's a long game
that we're playing here. And so working with kids.
And depending on the response that a child sees, even just visually on your face or verbally, words that you might say, your body language, everything is going to determine how motivated and what kind of reading experience this child has.
Right. And when your kids read, sometimes when the kid's reading, like we were just reading, really choppy, it's hard to have the patience to sit there and listen to them read.
Right. Which brings me to, in case, I don't know if you've seen it. Have you seen the movie Adam Sandler's Billy Madison?
I've seen it.
And he goes back to school and he has to go through each grade. Like he gets a week to go through each grade to graduate. And I can't remember what grade he's in, but there's a student who has a stutter, but also is struggling to read. And he's like, the pig. And he's like, and then Adam Sandler's character in the back is like, today, Junior. Like, just, I mean, so there, right? And I mean, of course, like as an audience, you're like, oh my gosh, that's so funny because we're feeling the same way. We're like, oh my gosh, come on. But that is a prime example of, you might be feeling so frustrated, but don't.
Please, like the biggest thing you got to have is patience with these kids. Mm-hmm. And some kids, they're going to, once they've read it, a word, and then they come across a word again and they don't know it again. You're like, you just read that word last line, you know? But it's because their brain is still going through all this work. You got to look at the sounds. You got to analyze the sound. And it's going to take their brains a while to put the sounds together and get on the freeway with it. Right?
Yes.
So have patience with your kids and help them learn that it does take hard work. It takes hard work, and give them encouragement. If you're giving them encouragement and love and praise, then they're going to do it a lot better and a lot faster and not feel discouraged. So.
Yep, absolutely.
All right. So join us next time. We're so glad you joined us today. Please, next episode 15 is going to be about dyslexia. It's going to be about dyslexia.
And so we're super excited. Don't forget to, if you're on YouTube, like, subscribe, share it.
Share.
We're also on Twitter. We're on Facebook at Candace and Belle.
Instagram.
That's it. You can listen to us on Apple Podcasts. I mean,
wherever you get your podcasts.
Yeah, we're everywhere. So please make sure that you're sharing it. We're really hoping that we can help anybody. People. Yeah, anybody out there.
Thank you, and we'll see you next time.
Have a good day. Bye.